Hi guys, Tastymond here to give my overall impressions of the Resident Evil Zero HD update and maybe a little review score at the end as well. So I'll be comparing this game to the older Resident Evil franchise really. That goes for Resident Evil 2, 3, Code Veronica and especially Remake. So where to really start with this game? This is a Resident Evil game that I can honestly admit I was never really a fan of it. It really goes against all the things I like when playing a Resident Evil game. Now I will admit I play all the Resident Evil games on hard mode, so I don't really do myself any favours when playing them. So when it comes to Resident Evil Zero I really dread it. The main problem with the game for me is that controlling two characters in this game is frustrating as hell, and that's basically because the AI controlling your partner is just plain stupid. You can run by enemies only for your partner to be left behind and get hit, or even running out of a room and you made the mistake of not putting your character on idle mode, which means they might just stay behind and try to kill the enemies, and they might even die in the process, and also use up all of your ammo. I honestly think taking control of the two characters in the game is actually the most frustrating part of it. Having to manage two characters' health bars as well can be pretty tough, especially on the hard mode. This is kind of extremely frustrating. I just came off of a hard mode playthrough and I can honestly say I was mostly miserable through it all. A big downside in the game is that Billy can't actually mix herbs, only Rebecca can. So if you pick up herbs and you have to mix them, you need to go into the inventory and switch a lot of stuff about. That can be quite a bit of a bummer. Speaking of the characters in this game, it kind of does force you to play as Billy most of the time because he has double the HP of Rebecca. I find this to be one of the biggest downfalls, because I honestly think Rebecca is the best thing about the game. I really do love the character of Rebecca. Bosses in this game I think are a bit ridiculous. I think a giant scorpion, a giant bat, it's just not ever really made sense. I know the remake had a giant snake, but they kind of went out of their way to give the snake a lair in the mansion, so it kind of felt like it belonged there somehow. And another thing about the character item management in the game, instead of just putting things in a box, you gotta leave items on the ground if you can't carry them. And I always found this to be a tad frustrating as well. I just don't like it. I would much prefer to have a box. Some people might prefer this method though, as it is kind of a more realistic approach. And I can totally see that, but really, if you leave something in one area and you need to later have backtrack to go and get it again, it can be a major pain in the ass. You might have to backtrack through monsters or zombies that you dodged, and you're putting yourself in danger again really, and you might have to use a lot of health items in the process. Now Resident Evil Zero, we have to keep in mind, was a far more ambitious title than Remake, even though Remake is a superior game. You gotta hand it to Zero for at least trying new things. It's just a shame that they really failed. People forget that back in the day people were starting to get a little bit tired of the fixed camera angles and tank controls, which is why Resident Evil 4 changed it all in the first place. It's just funny that everybody thinks that they now need to revert back to the old way, and I think they should too. I definitely think they should. Through all the bad things I've said about Zero though, I would much rather play it over 5, 6, Revelations 1 and Revelations 2 any day, because I actually think those games are terrible, and I do not consider them canon to the Resident Evil story. Just for me. As far as the HD update goes, I always thought this game looked fantastic. I mean, this is still a 2002 game at heart, with a little HD treatment, or big HD treatment, depending on how you look at it. It looks like it can stand up to most of the games today, no problem. Some people, when the remake came out last year for the first game, didn't even know it was a HD update of a game that came out over 10 years ago, so it really shows you how many people actually played the older games. The scenery and atmosphere of the game are great. I actually think the zombies in this game are some of the best looking zombies I've ever seen in a Resident Evil game. Some of the monster designs I don't like. The enemies, like the monkeys, the spiders, there's just a few ridiculous enemies in the games and I just don't like them. The Wesker mode was a disappointment. I actually thought it was going to be a new mode, but I found out Wesker just replaces Billy in a new playthrough. I mean, it's clearly just a fun mode though, because Wesker is overpowered as hell. His I-beam move can literally kill anything in one shot, Even bosses take like 3 shots of this and they're down. But it is quite a good mode to familiarise yourself with the game in terms of layouts, enemy placements. It's like any Resident Evil game in terms of, even for like the hard mode, if you play the game enough and you know what to expect, you'll get better at it. When it comes to my personal opinions about Resident Evil Zero though, I don't think it's a good Resident Evil game now, and I don't think it was a good one back then either. I remember Zero was announced before Remake, and Capcom gave us the remake before Zero, but everybody in the back of their mind was thinking, oh yeah, it's Zero that we're really waiting for, and this remake's here to tide us over. But little did we really know that we were already playing the superior game. Personally, I think the story in the game is pointless, and I wish they would have made Zero and Remake work together a bit better. One of the things that always got me was that Rebecca's such a little girl in the remake, and literally the day before, according to Zero, she was killing tyrants solo, and she's only to be scared by a hunter in Resident Evil Remake and rely on Chris to have to save her, or she literally dies if you don't save her. That kind of thing always got to me. I wish they did work the two games together better, because they did know that Zero was coming out after Remake. Rebecca is the best part about Zero for sure. I just wish it would have been a solo game that revolved around her, as I never really ever cared for Billy. I always thought he was a bit of a boring character. As far as difficulty level goes for Zero, I recommend new players to be playing it on normal, or even easy mode, as you might actually enjoy it more, because I actually think this game on hard is the hardest Resident Evil in the main series. People say that Code Veronica is, but that's only because there's literally no difficulty setting of the game for Code Veronica. So in Zero you do have difficulty settings. People will not go to the hardest mode. If you go straight on hard mode for Zero, it will be miserable. Like, trust me. The mechanics of the game are even more frustrating on hard mode. Would I recommend this game though? It's tough to say. Part of me wants to say yes, because it was the last Resident Evil game that we got in the main series with fixed camera angles, tank controls, and part of me wants to say no, because it's a major pain in the ass. I think if you are a major Resident Evil fan, you will have already bought it, but if you aren't, I would recommend Resident Evil Remake, as it's superior, and it's a better jumping on point for sure. Resident Evil Zero from me though, a lifelong Resident Evil fan. Even though it has great atmosphere, beautiful graphics and Rebecca, I think I'm only going to give it a 6 out of 10 for its pointless story, frustrating game mechanics, horrible bosses and bad enemy designs. I hope everybody did enjoy the video, and leave some comments about how you feel about the game. Take it easy.